The movie Scream has inspired many sick individuals to commit murder. Most Scream-inspired killers are young individuals who obsess over the movie and fantasize about murdering. Oftentimes, these Scream copycat murder suspects will consist of two individuals who are involved in the crime. Cases such as Daniel Gill and Robert Fuller, Mario Padilla and Samuel Ramirez, Tori Admisick and Brian Draper. Some killers who are inspired by the movie Scream do not have an accomplice, but are nevertheless linked to the movie through the use of the iconic Ghostface mask or by their admittance of their obsession over the movie. Crimes committed by Scream copycat killers are usually not very well planned. These murders consist of the use of a sharp knife-like weapon, and oftentimes these crime scenes will show signs of excessive force and overkill. Victims in these cases are usually someone the killer or killers know. Most people have either watched or know of the movie Scream. What most people don't know is that the screenplay writer Kevin Williamson was inspired by a real-life killer. Williamson's screenplay was eventually turned into the movie Scream and was directed by Wes Craven. The killer who inspired the movie Scream, the Gainesville Ripper. On August 26, 1990, police were called to conduct a welfare check at the Williamsburg complex in Gainesville, Florida. The caller was 17-year-old Christina Powell's mother, who was frantic after not hearing from her daughter for a couple of days. After breaking down the door to the apartment, police immediately discovered the body of Sandra Larson, who was Christina's 18-year-old roommate. After descending to the bottom floor of the apartment, police officers discovered the body of Christina Powell. Both of the victims were brutalized and mutilated by the perpetrator using a sharp knife. The victims were posed by the perpetrator following their deaths. On August 27, 1990, a part-time clerk for the Alachua County Sheriff's Office didn't show up for work. The young clerk was 18-year-old Krista Hoyt. Since it was uncharacteristic of her to miss work, a sheriff was dispatched to her apartment. After knocking on the door and receiving no response, the deputy walked around the back of the apartment and looked through the sliding glass door that led into Krista Hoyt's bedroom. Through the glass door, the deputy could see Hoyt's lifeless body. Krista Hoyt was brutalized and mutilated in a way that was consistent with being the signature style of the perpetrator who had murdered Christina Powell and Sandra Larson. Key factors were similar, such as the mutilation and positioning of the bodies post-death. This time, the killer went a step further in his depravity. The perpetrator had removed Krista's head and positioned it as well. On August 28, 1990, a student at the University of Florida was concerned that her friend hadn't showed up for any of her classes. The concerned friend contacted a maintenance personnel who worked at the Gatorwood complex where her missing friend had resided. The maintenance man used a master key to enter the apartment of Tracy Inez Powell, who was 23, and her roommate Manuel Taboada, who was also 23. This time the perpetrator used a knife to murder his victims, but did not mutilate his victims. Tracy's body was post-mortem, but Manuel, a 23-year-old male, was left where he had died. It's possible that the perpetrator did not commit acts of mutilation because he had fought a 23-year-old male during the crime, which in some way could have hindered the perpetrator's ability to follow along with his signature style. The perpetrator of these crimes came to be known as the Gainesville Ripper. His murder spree began on August 24th when he attacked Sandra Larson and Christina Powell. Only a day later, he had committed the brutal acts that took Krista Hoyt's life, and ended his attacks on August 27th with the brutal murders of Tracy Powell and Manny Taboada. After the 3-day crime spree, the community of Gainesville were terrified and on edge. The Gainesville community would have to wait until November 1990 for the Gainesville Ripper to be caught and brought to justice. In November 1990, Crime Stoppers Hotline received a tip from a woman named Cindy Lerserich. who lived in Shreveport, Louisiana. Cindy, who was traveling through Florida at the time, heard about the unsolved murders that occurred in Gainesville in August.
He'd come over, every night for a while. And then one night Stephen came in and he goes, "He's got to go." And I said, "What?" He goes, "He tells me he's got this problem." I said, "What kind of problem?" He likes to stick knives into people. It was just unbelievable for me to hear. It just would not let me rest. It would not let me rest. One day, picked up the phone. I called Crime Stoppers and I said, "I think there's one guy y'all need to investigate. His name's Danny Rolling."
Investigators began to locate Danny Rolling, who was in jail in Marion County, which is a county about 40 miles from Gainesville. Danny had been arrested for robbing a supermarket. Danny Rolling did not immediately admit that he was the perpetrator of these crimes, but in May 1991, Rolling was named as the prime suspect in the Gainesville Ripper murders and was linked to the crimes through DNA. Danny Rolling's trial began on February 15, 1994. On the first day of his trial, Danny admitted to murdering all 5 of the University of Florida students. Rolling was executed by lethal injection on October 25, 2006. Before his death, Rolling gave a pastor a handwritten note in which he confessed to the triple homicide of Julie Grissom, 24, Sean Grissom, 8, and William Grissom, 55. The triple homicide of the Grissom family members was conducted using a knife in which William was stabbed multiple times and Sean was stabbed once. Julie was stabbed multiple times in the back, but was positioned so that her face was towards the ceiling. Vinegar was poured on her body, and none of the victims showed signs of mutilation.